Kyle asks quite simply, what happened to Florida State and Miami? They used to be powerhouses. Simply put, they've made bad hires. They've made bad hires. Every major college football program, every single one of them is a good hire away from being great or a bad hire away from being bad. And that sounds so elementary, right? Like, oh, that's very profound, Michael. Thank you. That's why I pay to listen to this show. I'm kidding. This is obviously free. And maybe that statement was what it's worth. But my point is, I think too often people are down on programs like the ones in this state. We saw a great coach take Vanderbilt to 9 wins. We've seen Texas be good before. That's hard to believe. But Miami and Florida State are in the position that they're in because they've simply made bad hires. Mississippi State was ranked number 1 in the country at one point. Went to an Access Bowl because they made a good hire. So when people talk about how programs are far away or you can't win big there, I call bull with a 4-letter word attached to it. Because I don't believe that to be true. Are you winning national...
Hockey is not a 4-letter word.
Hockey. 6-letter word. Bull hockey. That's what it is.
Bull hockey.
Are you going to win national championships at Ole Miss or Mississippi State? Maybe not. Probably not. But we have seen both of those programs go to Access Bowls in the college football playoff era. That's only in the last 8 years, by the way. Ole Miss has been to 3 Access Bowls, and the program got hit with what should have been crippling NCAA sanctions. Ole Miss felt dead in the freaking water in 2019. What do you think we were talking about Ole Miss football on this show at the end of 2019? It was bleak. The outlook was horrible. Nobody wanted to support the program. Nobody wanted to go watch games at Ole Miss. The attendance was terrible. Recruiting wasn't good. Matt Corral was going to transfer to Oregon. The outlook for Ole Miss football at the end of 2019 was horrible. And then Keith Carter made a good hire. And now look at Ole Miss football today. Clemson had no history. They won 1 national championship in 1981 in a year where ESPN described it as the worst season in college football history. That is Clemson's claim to fame. No Heisman Trophy winners, very little conference championships. It was not a good program. They had the bones to be there, good fans, all that. But it wasn't worth anything. And then they promoted an interim guy who was given an F grade by Pat Forty, who was at ESPN at the time, by the way. And now look at Clemson football today. Clemson football before Dabo Swinney was not a championship-level program. It was not one of the best in the sport. There are dozens of college football programs that I think are one single hire away from being nationally competitive. We've seen it in this state. We've seen it in others. So why are Miami and Florida State in the position they're in? Bad hires. It's that simple. Some programs are easier to win than others. But if you have SEC on your chest, you can win at a high level at 13 of the 14 programs. And even the 14th can win 9 games in back-to-back years.
I mean, when Jimbo Fisher left Florida State, they replaced him with Willie Taggart.
Yep,
a coach who didn't have an overall winning record. This was Florida State. At that point, they're 5 years away removed from being in the from winning the national title, and 4 years removed from being in the playoff. Had the program gone downhill a bit? Yeah, obviously. It's still Florida State. He could have gone out and gotten an elite coach. They didn't, and now they're about to be on their 3rd head coach in the last, 5 years when Norvell gets fired at the end of this season. Miami, Butch Davis leaves, got that program absolutely at the top. Out of loyalty, their next 2 coaches are Larry Coker, who was his one of his coordinators who had been there a long time, who they found out later on was just looking at Rivals.com and picking out the highest rated kids to recruit. Didn't actually do any evaluations. Then they hired a former player, Randy Shannon, who had never been a head coach. Then they hired Al Golden from Temple. I mean, look at these things. They finally made a decent hire with Mark Richt, but even he couldn't get it going there. Manny Diaz couldn't get it going there. I think they finally got the right guy. But it took them 2 decades to figure it out. Now they've got the right guy. We'll see if they can go in the right direction. Florida State, I mean, if I'm Florida State, I think I said this the other day, my short list is 2 guys who live in the state of Mississippi. I'm talking to Dion, and if I didn't hurt his feelings enough last time, I think he would take that job. But I'm talking to Dion because he'll get you talent. And if he says no, I go to Lane Kiffin, and I'm going to throw a Godfather kind of offer at him. I'm going to be like, $12 million a year, total control. Here's the university buying you a new house on the water. Whatever it takes to get you here, I'm going to do it. And if he says no, well, then you can't settle. You got to go out and get a real coach.
Yeah. And so all that to say, because I've heard from people that say, if Clemson and Florida State join the SEC, it just makes it even harder for Ole Miss and State to win. Does it, though? Does it really, though? Because this past Ole Miss team, 2021, they would have beaten Clemson by 3 touchdowns if they played in October and November. And that might even be conservative. Clemson's defense was exceptional most of the season. They couldn't score on anybody. They couldn't score on Pittsburgh. They couldn't score on Boston College. They couldn't score on anybody. So that's what I'm getting at. Here's a text here. Southern Miss, Ellis Johnson. Exactly. What was Southern Miss when Ellis Johnson took over? And how quickly did they become not that?
They were the defending Conference USA champions. Now, I know that Fedora left at the moment when most of the team was leaving with him, but that's a hell of a fall from 10 wins and conference champions to winless.
Yeah.
Worst team in college football. It's because you hired the wrong coach.
We get this one, and I agree with this. Hire Saban at either school here, and within 3 years, one place for a natty. It may not be 3 years, but I think he would do it.
Yeah.
I think he would do it. And Nick Saban's he's the greatest college football coach of all time.
Yeah.
But still, and another one points out, Vance says between Stallings and Saban, even Alabama sucked.
Yeah. Stallings leaves, and then they go, Dubose? So they went the alumni hire. No good. Dennis Francione, who looked like he was going to be okay, but then he left for Texas A&M in one of the shocking moves of all time. Mike Price didn't even coach a game. Mike Shula, not good. And then Saban. Got to have the right coach. Having the right coach is the most important piece to the puzzle in college football. Yeah. If you don't have the right coach, you cannot win in college football. Nobody is winning with a below-average coach.
Nobody. Even Alabama. So while your infrastructure may not rival Alabama's and Texas A&M's, but, I mean, look at Mississippi's record, both Ole Miss and State. Mississippi as a whole's record against Texas A&M since they've joined the SEC. That's 10 minutes of talk before I got to my point. You're not as far away as you think you are. Hell, man, if Matt Corral doesn't get hurt in the Auburn game, Ole Miss would have had an argument, and they win that game, obviously. If he doesn't get hurt and they win that game, Ole Miss would have an argument for a college football playoff spot last year. At 11-1 in the SEC with your one loss on the road in Tuscaloosa, where you covered the spread, by the way, you would have an argument over Cincinnati for a spot in the college football playoff. That's how close you are. A bum ankle away. Your margin for error is smaller, but you're not as far as people want to convince you that you are.